members of the media, thanks for coming out on this very wet morning, and welcome to this media conference, which is jointly hosted this morning by MSJ and Democracy Watch. I want to welcome our colleague, Mr. Ramesh Maharaj, Senior Counsel of Democracy Watch. He needs no introduction in terms of his immense contribution to the law and to the governance of Trinidad and Tobago. We have come together, MSJ and Democracy Watch, and a number of other concerned individual citizens, to launch this morning what we are calling Citizens Intervention. The Citizens Intervention is going to be a series of public meetings, town hall meetings throughout Trinidad and Tobago, which will take place between now and sometime before elections 2015, before the 7th of September 2015. You may ask the question, why citizens' intervention? We feel it is necessary for there to be in Trinidad and Tobago a discussion, serious discussion of the very real and important issues that affect our country and which affect citizens individually. We have been observing the political discourse over the last several months and have recognized that citizens are no wiser about the fundamental issues as a result of the general political discourse coming from the platforms. It is very clear that Trinidad and Tobago faces a crisis of leadership where there's an absence of clear vision, an absence of specific policies and ideas that would resolve the fundamental problems that are affecting us. Whether those problems are crime and violence, or corruption, or bad governance, or the problems of the education system, or at the level of individual security of lives in terms of health care and generally the quality of life of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Nor are we getting from the public platforms a clear analysis of the major economic problems that we face and the way forward. And I'll elaborate on some of these as well as Mr. Maharaj in a moment. In this circumstance as well, what we have is a crisis of our institutions. All of our institutions, from the office of the President to the Parliament, to the Cabinet or the Executive, the Judiciary, the Service Commissions, the Integrity Commission, the Justice System, all of the institutions have collapsed. And we are seeing every day manifestations of that collapse. The prison system, for example, is in crisis, but that is related to the crisis of the justice system. The fact that there are perhaps some 400 or 500 murder trials that are before the High Court, which have not yet started, and which may take 15 or 20 years to be completed in circumstances where the number of murder cases that go before the courts are perhaps less than 10% of all the murders that are committed. So the judiciary is in crisis. The prison system is in crisis with overcrowding and so on. Our education system continues to be problematic, notwithstanding the fact that our brightest students are doing fantastically well, and of course we congratulate those who did well in the recent SCA examinations. But there are other dimensions of the education system, such that 50% of all the children who wrote SCA this year will probably in 5 years' time not get a pass in mathematics and English or get 5 subjects at their first shot at CXE. That suggests that our education system continues to be in crisis. The situation of the economy, where business people can't get foreign exchange. And individual citizens who are going abroad on holiday, for example, over the July and August holidays, are not able to get foreign exchange to enjoy their holidays, or business people can't get foreign exchange to be able to pay for goods and services that they are importing from abroad. This is a crisis of the economy. The budget is in major deficit, which deficit is being masked by the sellout of assets, CLICO assets, the Phoenix Park IPO and so on, all to hide the fact that our budget is in serious deficit. All of these problems and issues are going to face us starkly on September 8th. And the talk on the political platform is not addressing these major things. So we have crisis of leadership, crisis of institutions, and this double or the colliding of this crisis of leadership and crisis of institutions means that all is falling down in Trinidad and Tobago. As we have said before, Humpty Dumpty has fallen down and is broken, and all the kings or queens' horses and kings and queens' men can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. The situation is broken. And so we feel very strongly that what is required is a citizens' intervention where we will be going around Trinidad and Tobago, addressing the fundamental issues and offering ideas about how the situation and the crisis and problems can be corrected and resolved. This is a very important intervention, and our first activity will be this coming Thursday at the Pleasance Park Community Center in Pleasance Park, Pointe-à-Pierre, beginning at 6 p.m. We have a number of persons who have come forward and agreed to be part of the citizens' intervention. And so we expect that we will have supporting in terms of speakers, both Ms. Maharaj and myself, of course, but in support of this process and participating, not necessarily all at the same meeting, because we have a number of meetings and not all of us will speak necessarily at the same meeting. But we have, for example, Mr. Gregory Maguire, well-known economist, particularly an energy economist, who is in support of the citizens' intervention. Dr. Carol James, who is a well-known environmentalist and a community activist in support of proper planning and green spaces, and she's in support of the process. Mr. Vashish Maharaj, attorney at law, who has major concerns about issues around land and the electoral system and so on, and how that discriminates in terms of maintaining the status quo in the country. Mrs. Indira Sajuan Ali, who is a well-known economist and commentator on public affairs. Ms. Michaela Pandey has agreed to be part of this process as well. And there'll be others who are going to be announced in time to come. Not all will be speaking on Thursday, but we will have a very powerful lineup of speakers on Thursday, and others are going to be joining in as we engage in our conversation with them in this citizens' intervention, because there are a lot of good people in Trinidad and Tobago who are horrified about what is taking place, horrified about the collapse of governance in Trinidad and Tobago, horrified about the corruption, about the abuse of office by this government, horrified by the fact that public office is being used for private gain, horrified by the fact that at the center of the corruption there is an Alibaba, because you can't have 40 thieves without an Alibaba, as Lloyd Best had quipped many years ago. And in this circumstance, citizens are prepared to come forward and say, and put their hands up and say, let us be part of a citizens' intervention to educate, inform the people of the country. And we look forward, of course, to the media's contribution to this process as we get the word out to the public about the fundamental questions and issues that face us at this time. So that's my opening comment, and I would ask Mr. Maharaj now to speak to us on the issues. Yes, and we'll switch places for the camera purposes. Thank you.
David, and good morning to members of the media. I want to say that Democracy Watch is honored and is pleased to join MSJ to have these town meetings and public meetings. The right to vote is an important right of every citizen in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is very important for the electorate to know the material facts which can influence them in exercising that right. The government is asking for another 5 years, and therefore I think that it is very important for Democracy Watch to put pressure upon the government to account to the population through these public meetings in respect of not only approximately $400 billion which have been spent over the last 5 years, but in respect of issues which have come about in Trinidad and Tobago, in respect of which we do not think that there has been proper accounting. For example, I do not think that this government has accounted to the population on the issue of crime in Trinidad and Tobago. The government came into office on a promise to the population that if it got into office, it would deal with the crime problem and Trinidad and Tobago would be safe again. We have seen under this term, under the last 5 years, the crime situation has become worse. The criminal gangs problem have become worse. We have a situation now where in a holy place, someone can be murdered. These are serious matters facing the security of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to discuss the issue of crime at these meetings, and I want the government to answer certain questions that I would pose to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is head of the cabinet. She is responsible as the leader for governance in Trinidad and Tobago by her cabinet. Under the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, there is personal responsibility of the Prime Minister, personal political responsibility, and also collective responsibility of the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. There are other issues which occurred, whether it is Ganja Gate, Prison Gate, Email Gate. But for example, Section 34, I want the Prime Minister to answer to this country, how is it that she, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, sat down with her Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago in a room, wherever that room is, whether it is in Trinidad and Tobago at a cabinet meeting or in Tobago at a hotel, and agreed that Section 34 alone out of a whole act of Parliament should be proclaimed into law, and for the President to get that on Independence Night. And what we are having in Trinidad and Tobago, we are having a situation in which there is a major development which has never developed in such a magnitude as it has happened in Trinidad and Tobago. The question of state resources and state funds being used by the government for party political purposes and campaigning. I do not know if this country knows, but the former Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, went to jail for using state funds for party political purposes. And I want to examine publicly the use of state funds for party political purposes and campaigning. Never before in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, you have a situation in which a government has approximately 3 months to campaign while the Parliament is not sitting. And during that period of time, you have major contracts are being awarded for new projects, and you have new policy decisions are being made. This is a serious matter because there is no Parliament for the government to account, and there is no machinery which the government has put in place for it to account to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. So we join with MSJ because we believe that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago have to intervene. This is going to be the most important election in Trinidad and Tobago. The people ought to know who they are voting for, what track record this government had, and what the other political parties are offering. We are going to assist the population to try for them to make that choice. We know that in Trinidad and Tobago today, there are many people who are undecided, and therefore we want to be able to assist them. The right to vote is a right which every citizen in Trinidad and Tobago should exercise. The right to vote also carries the right not to vote. But we want to be able to explain to the country what are the issues and for the and to make the government to account on the major issues which have occurred in Trinidad and Tobago over the last 5 years. I also want to give you a little idea of another issue. This government has passed some laws, but one of the most important laws which this government promised to pass was not passed. And I want the Prime Minister to tell the country why it is that the government has not passed that law. You remember the partnership on the election hosting and in their manifesto, and David would remember this, said that the most important thing which has to be changed in Trinidad and Tobago is that the people of Trinidad and Tobago must not only have power once in 5 years. The people of Trinidad and Tobago must have power every day of the 5 years. And as soon as we get into government, we are going to pass a law. There is going to be a change in the governance of Trinidad and Tobago. The people would be able to participate in the decisions of government. Government would not change policies without consultation with the population. We are going to pass a law that will have referenda on major issues in Trinidad and Tobago, so that if the government want to make a major change in Trinidad and Tobago, the people would have a right to vote on that issue. We have heard so many things in Trinidad and Tobago over the last 5 years, but we haven't heard about the law on referendum. So I want the Prime Minister to tell this country why it is that she did not take steps to have that law passed, when that law could have been passed even during the last few months, when a lot of time was engaged in removing the leader of the opposition from the parliament. So we are happy to join with MSJ, and we look forward to talking with the population of Trinidad and Tobago, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, no, this is a citizen's intervention. As you notice, we were not present whatsoever with that third force, and there's a lot of speculation about that third force, which I suppose time will reveal. But I saw a statement in one of the newspapers this morning by Mr. Hamel-Smith saying that they're prepared to meet with both the PNM and the UNC to see which would kind of agree with them. That sounds like they're shopping around for office. This is not shopping around for office. This is about educating, informing the electorate about the very fundamental, serious issues of the day, and as Senior Counsel said, helping to guide people through all of the noise that is on the election platform so that the electorate could make a wise and proper choice about what happens on September 7th and afterwards. Well, MSJ already is a political party. No, citizen intervention is not meant to morph into something else. It is what it is, citizens' intervention. One element of which is the MSJ, which is a political party. Democracy Watch is a civil society organization, and there are other civil society organizations and individuals that are coming in as individual citizens, concerned citizens, as in some cases civil society organizations. Yes? This is Citizens Intervention, Democracy Watch. Start again, Ivan.
You just changed the name of the organization.
voting for? You want to switch seats? Asking which party you prepare to vote for.
Well, I think the right to vote is a right to have a secret vote also. And I wouldn't want to disclose to you, Mr. Tulsi, who am I going to vote for. But what I would like to do as a public service is to assist the population in making that choice and letting the government have an opportunity to account to the population in respect of issues that I think it is very important. I am no longer in electoral politics, and I do not intend to be involved in electoral politics. But I think that whichever government gets into office, I would be continuing this role in making government account to the population. I think I would like to spend whatever years I have remaining in order to try and do that service, because I think the time has come for government to really account to the population for what it is doing, whether it is this government or another government. So I'll be seeing you even after the election at these press conferences, informing you of what we think government should account for. Oh, certainly I would be voting on the 7th, and I think my polling station is nearby here. I could tell you when I'm going to vote if you want, but I'll give you a call. But I'll be voting on the 7th. I do not know what you mean, but I'm on the fence. I am here sitting at a table.
Exactly. Speaking to the issues. Speaking to the issues.
Yes, speaking to the issues.
Yes.
You better come here.
Yes. I was waiting for that one. Yes. As we have repeatedly said, Richardson, and we maintain our position, the MSJ is going to make the announcement about our electoral intervention, that is with respect to contesting and so on, at a later stage. What we do believe and are committed to is a process of public education and information, because you see, we have talked about the need for a revolution of the mind. For us to bring about fundamental change, citizens need to understand what the issues are. And unfortunately, a lot of what is happening on the public platforms really is to confuse citizens so that their choice becomes clouded. And that is why this process of the citizens' intervention is so important, to set out the issues in a very clear, precise way so that people could make the right choice. So we are about revolution of the mind, of educating people, of raising consciousness and awareness, and so on. When the time comes for our announcement, we will let you know for sure. Yes, have no fear about that. But this is an important process of public education. Because see, most political parties, if I say so, do not engage in public education. They're about the big rallies, waving flags and blowing whistles and horns. And you get, what was it they took for it? Bells and whistles. Bells and whistles, smoke and mirrors. And in the confusion and noise of bells and whistles and horns and smoke and mirrors, the country is confused about the real issues. And we as MSJ, we are not about that. We are about educating, informing, raising consciousness. Okay? And we're very happy to work with Democracy Watch. Mr. Maharaj has been doing a tremendous job over many years through press conferences and his own meetings of Democracy Watch, of educating people and informing on the issues of the day about the law and on governance and so on. And there are other citizens here. Indira Sajwanali has been speaking out, Gregory Maguire, many of these persons, Dr. Carol James and so on. Ms. Pandey have been speaking out on the issues, and so we are bringing these people who are speaking out on the issues to do this process at this time.
You want to mention then that you're making efforts to see whether even some of past politicians will...
Yes. Yeah. And as Mr. Raja said, there'll be others who are going to join. There are a number of persons who we have spoken with, and within the next 2 weeks, our list of concerned citizens will be extended, and some major personalities who have been involved in public affairs and politics will reassure join the list of persons who will be part of our platform of speakers. Yes, Radhika. Well, let me go back to 3 years ago when I said to the Prime Minister in the last meeting of political leaders of the partnership that I attended, and I've said this before, in May of 2012, I said to her, Mr. Warner was in the room at the time, as was Prakash Ramadar, Ashwa Jack, Makandal Daga. And I said to her, Prime Minister, corruption will bring the partnership down. And she asked, at the cabinet level or state board level, and I said, both. And others agreed, and she too agreed, and then said, pushed back her chair and basically said, I can do nothing, I can't do anything about this thing. And so it's very clear that corruption is bringing her government first into disrepute, into national and regional and international disgrace, and is also likely to bring the government down, yes. And Mr. Warner is, I suppose, has information that some of us don't have and is making that public. But the other issue is, what are the institutions? Our institutions have failed. So that,
From the head of state.
That's right. So you have, as Mr. Maharaj said, what is now Ganja Gate. Why isn't there a definitive thing? Could you imagine an allegation like that being made in the United States or in England, that ganja was found, or a plant-like substance was found at 10 Downing Street? You think that could remain unresolved for 2 months? Within weeks, police would have closed the investigation, prosecutions would have taken place, and I think that is what Mr. Maharaj, when he speaks on Thursday, will deal with. How can the institutions of the justice system ensure that we don't remain with these allegations and rumors or talk floating around in the country for years with no resolution? That is untenable. We have to find the truth of these matters. The house next door, and so on, you know. And one is, I mean, I'm getting information about that too. The house next door, whose house is that really, and so on. These issues need to be resolved, and as we have said, NGC, the corporate communications expenditure of NGC, Petrotrin and the Southwest Soldado contracts. All of these things are out in the public domain, no conclusion. Clearly there is corruption, abuse of office, and the abuse of the state enterprise sector, and public office for private gain. And the country needs to make a powerful statement that that is unacceptable come September 7th. Okay. And we look forward to the media being present, all the South and North media. We welcome Alicia and her caravan from North to South today. And we hope that from North, the directions to get there. And we're going to have some very powerful statements on Thursday evening, which we can't say today because we have to encourage you to come out on Thursday. So come out on Thursday and you'll get some very powerful statements and revelations as well.
Thanks a lot.
If I leave home, well, I tell she a real close. Girl, I almost did all inclusive fed. Yeah, tonight go her real